Hi guys, welcome back to chapter 17 of the City of Ember. That last chapter was crazy. Lina was captured by the guards, taken to the mayor, sassed him really good, and then managed to escape again. I wonder what Doon has been doing this whole time. Do you think, we know that he's managed to get his movable light, his candle, and is moving towards the pipeworks. That's the last thing that Lina saw. Let's touch base with Doon. We're actually in this chapter going to go back in time a little bit. So we just saw that whole chunk of time told from Lina's perspective. Okay, that's how she saw things. Now we're going to have Doon tell us in this next chapter about that same chunk of time, but through his eyes. Let's catch back up, shall we? Chapter 17 is called Away. You can find it on page 226. There are some, I will tell you this, as you're reading along, you'll see some italicized words, some little slanty words. Those are going to be song lyrics. You remember in the last chapter, they are in the midst of a city holiday for the city of Ember. It's the singing. So we're going to be, I'm not going to sing them to you. You're welcome. You know, you can tell me thank you in the comments for not singing to you. I will read these lyrics to you, and I want you to really try to connect those words, those lyrics, song lyrics, to what's happening in Ember. Are you ready? I am. Page 226. At 3:20, Doon took his pillowcase pack, left the school by the back door, and started up Pibb Street. He went fast. The lights had gone out for a few minutes just before 3, and he was nervous about being outside. He planned to take the long way to the pipeworks out at the very edge of the city to avoid any guards that might still be looking for him. He was filled with dread about Lina. He wouldn't know what had happened to her until he got to the pipeworks, and either she showed up or she didn't. All he could do now was run. He raced down Knack Street. It was strange to be out in the city with the streets so utterly deserted, meaning empty. Nobody was there. Without the people passing back and forth, the streets seemed wider, darker. Excuse me. Nothing moved but himself, his shadow, and his fleeting reflection in shop windows as he passed. In Silverton Square, he saw a kiosk where a poster with his and Lina's names had been pinned up. I read that sentence horribly. I'm taking a do-over on that one. In Silverton Square, he saw a kiosk where the poster with his and Lina's names on it had been pinned up. Everyone in the city must have seen these posters by now. He was famous, he thought wryly, but not in the way that he had wanted. There would be no glorious moment on the gathering hall steps after all. Instead of making his father proud, he would cause him dreadful worry. This thought made him so sad that his knees felt suddenly wobbly. How could he just vanish without a word? But it was too late now. He couldn't go back. If only there was some way to send a message. And in that moment, he realized there was. He stopped, fished in his pack for the paper and pencil he had brought, and scribbled on it. "Father, we have found the way out. It was in the pipeworks after all. You will know about it tomorrow. Love, Doon." He folded this in quarters, wrote "Deliver to Loris Harrow" in big letters on the outside, and pinned it to the kiosk. There. It was the best he could do. He would have to trust that someone would deliver it. In the distance, he heard the faint sound of the singing. He listened. It was the song of the river, just ending. "Far below, like the blood of the earth, from the center of nowhere rushing forth." He sang that under his breath. Like everyone in Ember, he knew the words of the 3 songs by heart. He sang along softly with the faraway singers. Listen to these lyrics. "Making the light for the lamps of Ember, older than anyone can remember. Faster than anything anyone knows, the river comes and the river goes. Up Rim Street, now to River Road. He was halfway there. The singers were starting on the Song of Darkness. That was his favorite, with its powerful, deep harmonies. He was a little sorry to be missing it, actually. He went up the Pot Street side of empty River Road Square, where another poster hung crookedly on the kiosk, and he was headed towards North Street when suddenly the lights flickered and went out. Now remember, where was Lina at this time? Can you think back to the last chapter? Yeah, that first time that they flickered and went out, that was when Lina was making her escape. Nope, I guess if they were singing, she'd be on the roof by now, right? He jolted to a stop. Stand still and wait. That was his automatic response. In the distance, he heard a dip in the sound of the singing, some startled voices breaking the flow, but then the song rose again, defying the darkness. For a moment, all thoughts vanished from Doon's mind. There was nothing but the fearless words of the song. Black as sleep and deep as dreaming, darkness like an endless night, yet within the streets of Ember, bright and bravely shines our light. Optimistic. He sang, standing still in the blackness. When the song ended, he waited. The lights would surely come back on soon. For a few minutes there was silence, and then, far away but piercingly clear, he heard a scream. More screams and shouts followed, and the sounds of panic. He felt the panic himself, like a hand taking hold of him, making him want to leap up and fling himself up against the dark. But suddenly, with a flash of joy, he remembered. He didn't have to wait for the lights to come back on. He had what no citizen of Ember had ever had before, a way to see in the dark. He set his pack down, untied the knot at the top, and groped around inside until he felt the candle. Down in a corner, he found a little packet of matches. He scraped a match against the pavement, and it flared up instantly. He held the flame to the string on the candle, and the string began to burn. He had a light. He had the only light in the entire city. The candle didn't cast its light very far, but it was enough to see at least the pavement in front of him. He went slowly along Pot Street and then turned left down North Street. At the end of the street was the wall of the pipeworks office. When he got to the pipeworks entrance, no one was there. A little cloud of moths came to flutter around the flame of his candle, but otherwise nothing moved in Plummer's Square. There was nothing to do but wait. Doon blew the candle out. He didn't want to use it all up in case the lights stayed off a long time. He squatted down on the pavement, setting down his bundle and leaning against one of the big trash cans. He waited. He listened to the distant shouts. And at last the lights blinked again, and came on. Lina was nowhere in sight. If the guards had found her and taken her, oof. But Doon preferred not to think about that yet. He would wait for a while. She would have been delayed by the blackout if she was on her way. He couldn't see the clock tower from here, but it was probably not quite 4 o'clock. What if she didn't come? The singing was over. The people were dispersing throughout the city, and the guards, no doubt, would soon resume their search for him. Doon clasped his arms together and pressed them hard against his stomach, trying to stop the queasy fluttering. If she didn't come, Doon had two choices. He could stay in the city and do what he could to save Lina, or he could go into the boat by himself and hope Lina could somehow free herself and tell the people of Ember about the way out. He didn't like either of these plans. He wanted to go down the river, and he wanted to go with Lina. Doon stood up and hoisted his sack again. He was too restless to keep sitting. He walked down to Gappery Street and looked in both directions. Not a single person in sight. He walked to Plummer Street, thinking that perhaps Lina was coming by way of the city's edge, as he had, to avoid being seen. But no one was there. He He didn't even see anyone when he went past Subling Street to the very end of the city. He had to decide what to do. He went and stood in the doorway of the pipeworks. Think, he said to himself. Think, think. He was not even sure he could make the river journey by himself. Like, how would he get the boat into the water? Could he lift it without help? And on the other hand, how could he help Lina if she was in the hands of the mayor's guards? What could he possibly do that would not just get himself caught too? He felt sick. His hands were cold. He stepped out of the doorway and scanned the square once again. Nothing moved but the moths around the light. And then, down Gappery Street, Lina came running. She came slantwise across the square, and he dashed to meet her. She was hugging a bundle to her chest. I've come. I'm here. I almost didn't make it, she said, breathing so hard she could barely talk. And look. She folded back the blanket of her bundle. Doon saw the curl of brown hair and two wide, frightened eyes. I've brought Poppy. Doon was so glad to see Poppy that he didn't even mind at all that Poppy was coming with them, making a risky journey even riskier. Relief and excitement flooded through him. They were going. They're going! Okay, he said. Come on! With his borrowed key, he opened the pipeworks door, and they hurried past the yellow slickers, the raincoats on their hooks, and the lines of rubber boots. Doon dashed into the pipeworks office long enough to replace the key on its hook, and then they pulled open the stairway door and stared down. Lina stepped slowly because of Poppy, and Poppy clung to her neck, unusually quiet, sensing the strangeness and importance of what was happening. At the bottom of the stairs, they came out into the main tunnel and walked down the path to the west until they came to the marked rock. How are we going to get Poppy down there? Doon asked. Lina said, I'll fasten her to my chest. Sitting Poppy down, Lina took off her coat and the sweater she was wearing. With Doon's help, she made her sweater into a sling for Poppy, tying its sleeves behind her neck. She put the coat back on and buttoned it up. So she was able to a sling, have you seen that before? Like if you have a broken arm, it's the cloth thing that goes around your cast to hold your arm in place. Well, she made something similar to that. Pardon me. Made something similar to that to keep Poppy attached to her. Sometimes mommies wear those with little babies just to strap the baby to their chest. Doon, we're at the bottom of page 232, last paragraph, if you're following along. Doon looked doubtfully at this bulky arrangement. Will you be able to climb down carrying her like that? Will you be able to reach around her to hold on to the rungs? Yes, said Lina. Now that she had Poppy with her, she felt brave again. She could do whatever she needed to do. Doon went down first. Lina followed. Stay very still, Poppy, she said. Don't squirm. Poppy did stay still, but even so, it was not easy going down the ladder with that extra weight. Lina's arms were just long enough to reach past Poppy and hold on to the ladder. She descended or went down very slowly. When she got to the ledge, she stepped sideways, gripped the hand Doon held out for her, and, with a deep breath of relief, came into the entryway. They walked back to the entry hall, and Doon opened the steel panel and took out the key. He slid aside the door to the room where the single boat was, and they went in. Doon took his candle from his sack and lit it. Lina unwrapped Poppy and sat her down at the back of the room. Don't move from there, she said. Poppy put a thumb in her mouth, and Doon and Lina set to work. Doon's sack went in the pointed end of the boat, which they decided must be the front. They put the boxes of candles and matches into the rear of the boat. It was clear that they'd been designed to go there. They fit snugly. The poles labeled paddles were a mystery. Lina thought maybe they were like weapons meant for fending off hostile creatures. Doon thought they might fit across the boat somehow to make railings to brace yourself against, but he couldn't get them to work in this way. Finally, they just decided to leave the paddles at the bottom of the boat and figure out what they were for as they went along. Doon dripped a bit of wax on the floor and stood the candle up in it so he'd have both hands free. "Let's see if we can lift this boat," he said. With Doon at the rear and Lina at the front, they found that they could lift the boat with ease. It was amazingly light, even with the boxes and pack inside of it. They set it down again. The next step was to get it in the water somehow, and then get in it themselves. "We can't just drop it in," Lina said. "The river will grab it right away." "Well, that must be what the ropes are for," said Doon. "We'll lower it in by holding onto the ropes and tie the ropes to something to keep it from moving." "What?" "Well, they must have put a peg or something in the wall to tie it to." Doon went back to the edge of the river and got down on his knees. Leaning over, he felt with one hand along the bank below. At first, there was only smooth, slippery rock. He moved his hands slowly back and forth, up and down. River water splashed against his fingers. At last, he felt something. A metal rod attached to the river wall, like the rungs of the ladder they had climbed down. "I found it!" he called. He got back up and went back to the boat room. "Let's carry the boat out," he said. He and Lina lifted it and, taking small steps, moved it forward. As they went out the door, Poppy began to wail. Excuse me. Pardon me. Poppy. Oh, goodness, Poppy began to wail. "Don't cry," Lina called to her. "Stay right there. We'll be back in a second." They carried the boat right to the edge of the water and set it down carefully, its front end pointing downstream. Doon knelt again, feeling for the metal rod. "Hand me the end of the rope," he said. "Which rope?" Lina thought for a second. She realized that it had to be the one attached to the side of the boat nearest her. That would be the side closest to the riverbank when they put the boat in. She uncoiled the rope, ran it around the boat, and handed its end down to Doon, who lay on his stomach with his head hanging over the edge, and knotted the rope to the metal rung on the wall. He got to his feet again, wiping water from his face. "Now," Doon said, "we can put the boat in the water." Another wail came from the boat room. "I'm coming," Lina called and dashed back for Poppy. She hoisted her up, lifted her up, and spoke into her ear in the voice she used for announcing an exciting game. "We're going on an adventure, Poppy. We're going to go for a ride on the water. Oh, it'll be fun, sweetie. You'll see." She blew out the candle Doon had left and carried Poppy to the river's edge. "Are we ready?" said Doon. "Yes, we are." Goodbye to Ember, Lina thought. Goodbye to everyone. Goodbye to everything. For a second, a picture of herself arriving in the bright city of her dreams flashed into her mind, and then it faded and was gone. She had no idea what lay ahead. She set Poppy down against the wall of the entry passage. "Sit here," she told her. "Don't move until I tell you to." Poppy sat, her eyes wide, her plump legs sticking out in front of her. Lina took hold of the rope at the rear of the boat. Doon took hold of the rope at the front. He heaved the boat up and stretched sideways to swing it out over the water. It tipped alarmingly from side to side. "Let it down!" yelled Lina. They both let the rope slide through their hands, and the boat fell and hit the water with a slap. It bounced and rocked and pulled against its tether. A tether is a tie, or it's like a rope. When you tie something, you tether it. So it bounced and rocked and pulled against its tether, but Doon's knot held. The boat stayed in place, waiting for them. "Here I go," Doon cried. He bent over, gripped the rim of the boat with one hand, turned backward, and stepped in. Whoa! The boat tipped sideways under his weight. Doon staggered a step and then found his balance. "All right," he yelled. "Hand me Poppy." Lina lifted Poppy, who began to howl and kick at the side of the bucking boat in the churning water. Can you blame her? Doon's arms were right there, and Lina thrust her into them. A second later, she jumped in herself, and then all three of them were tossed onto the floor of the boat by its violent rocking. Doon managed to get to his feet. He hauled on the rope that held the boat to the bank until he was close enough to reach the knot. He struggled with it. Water splashed into his face. He yanked at the knot, loosened it, pulled the rope free, and the boat shot forward. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. They're on the river. They're leaving Ember, Doon, Lina, and Poppy. Do you think they'll make it? I don't know. I know how to find out. Tune in for chapter 18. That's coming next. See you soon, bookworms.